ain't the same now. Lions coming out to play now. Opposition out the way now. Out of the way, you wasn't invited. Say you come to play, I dare you to try it. You don't wanna try me, then step up to my team. Yeah, out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way. Game now, me and you, we ain't the same now. Lions coming out to play now. Opposition out the way now. Out of the way, you wasn't invited. Say you come to play, I dare you to try it. You don't wanna try me, then step up to my team. Yeah, out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way, yeah, yeah. Out of the way.
Live tonight from iRacing's virtual circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to round 6 of the 2023 Real Sim Racing IceBreaker Winter Series. It is the one and only road course stop of the year and our one and only trip outside of the United States. We're in Montreal, Quebec, Canada is the host to this 6th round of 8 as we get closer and closer to crowning an IceBreaker champion. We're happy that you're with us for another Monday evening here on RaceSpotTV. Alongside Nolan Rempel, my name is Evan Pasoko. Our producer downstairs is Joshua Lee. And Nolan, an interesting challenge for the drivers who had their visas and passports to get to Montreal this week, right? All the drivers in that championship battle here tonight for a unique challenge that could separate the points even more so, especially consider what happened last week with Agno Phillip, the championship battle closer than it's been in some time.
The road courses always tend to be some of the more entertaining races of the year, aren't they? And yeah, it's a bit weird. Usually you'd think of those to be the races where we're going to settle things down a little bit, but not in RSR. That's usually when the championship gets all kicked up in a high gear. Got a lot of guys up at the front that we are not used to seeing there. The question is, will they be able to stay there? Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, it's a very, very tough circuit. It's far from the easiest thing out there. It's borderline a straight circuit as we run around a man-made island where the Olympics were once held.
It is flat. It has played host to the Canadian Grand Prix in Formula One for quite some time. Of course, NASCAR used to race here with the likes of the Xfinity Series, but you can see the look from high above inside the Parc Jean Drapeau just outside of Montreal. And it is, I think, one of the funnest road courses on the service, maybe even in North America. You take a look at the calendar coming into this evening, of course, off of Gateway is where we had that big championship swing. Tonight we raced at Montreal, New Hampshire in 1 week's time, and then under the lights for a 100-lap sprint in Las Vegas at the end of January. And we will then crown the 2023 Real Sim Racing IceBreaker Winter Series champion. And here are the points, Nolan. At Gateway, Agno Phillip, the conversation surrounding him was, would he be a full race's worth of points ahead? Coming into Montreal instead, an early DNF and a strong finish for Michael Araya means that your top 2 in the points are razor thin.
Only 5 points separate your top 2, and from there it's another 14 back to the likes of Tom Wetmore. So for Agno Phillip and Michael Araya, the fight is very much on for that championship position, but of course it's still just as tight a bit further back. You've only got less than 10 points separating 3rd through 5th, with only 2 separating Grant Davis and Corey Blevins. It's another 8 back to Andrew Phipps. So all the way in the midfield from about 3rd on back, it's still very, very close together over there, and it's still in one of those volatile situations where anything can change in a race like this one. I think the only 2 drivers that can really breathe a little bit and be satisfied they might come out of this race within the top 3 are, in fact, Araya and, of course, Agno Phillip.
And there is a look at the Bernardi 4 machine of Agnew Phillip. Of course, the one road course moniker has been around for a couple of seasons now in this IceBreaker Winter Series Championship. Last year, it was Mid-Ohio that played host. That race won by Matt Danson. Danson not competing in the race here tonight. The last time that, well, we went racing here at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve was back in 2021. But you've got some other top finishers that we got to be looking for. Cody Harris is always a threat, but I think the story right now, as we watch Agnew Phillip in this qualifying session, Olin, a longer qualifying session, 10 minutes to give drivers an opportunity if they want to try a lap at several different points. Still 2-timed laps is the number, but still waiting on those first couple of times to roll in. There's a couple of newcomers as well, but international flavor as well, continuing to grow in the series. And this is an angle I'm going to be watching all night. How about Ross Cato giving us the foot cam? Shoes, though, it's a hot take. I'm more of a socks guy myself in the sim, but that's going to be fun to see working those pedals all night.
You saw him feathering that throttle a little bit more to get that throttle blipped up as he downshifted all the way down through the gears as he approached turns 13 and 14 and filed it out to the wall of champions. Always, and it's so duly named for just about every champion that's ever raced here having hit that wall at least some point in their lifetime. And if any iRacer has told you that they haven't hit that wall, they are absolutely lying out of their teeth. Tom Wetmore trying to see if he can get himself a bit more of a better time. He currently has the 4th fastest time of about a 1:42. Down towards the tail end of the field, so a good ways off of Agnew Phillip, who currently sits well over 2 seconds up from Tom Wetmore now, and Phillip even 6/10 clear of the next closest driver, Cody Harris, and the only driver to break into the 140 bracket.
Yeah, Phillip goes to the top of the board. Harris second, no shock there. And then Trudell, Windmaster, Wetmore inside of the top 5 as they run now. Again, the track limits here are going to be pretty tight because there's very little elevation changes. You're going to have to work those curves, but Nolan, to your point, it almost races like a street circuit. There's concrete walls very close to the racetrack. There's not a lot of big paved runoff areas on this scan of the racetrack. Of course, Formula One has modified a lot of the racetracks as you see Nate Stewart go through the famous hairpin in recent years to get rid of a lot of the gravel and go to paved runoff areas, but an older scan here in Montreal means that you don't have all of those same elements, so these drivers are going to have to push the limit here and see just how aggressive they want to be and to balance risk versus reward all night, as here's the onboard with Lariah.
And in fact, it's a bit of a unique scan as well, because you'll notice as we ride with Lariah in the run-up, the turn 13 and 14 chicane has some very massive sausage curves that are not present here for pretty much any other series that ever races here. That's because this track was scanned back when it was called the Nationwide Series ran here. I believe in 2011 was when this track was finally scanned, back when they had those extra special sausage curves in for the stock cars, so they couldn't just vault up and over the curves that were there by default for the Formula One race. Of course, those curves, you would never see them there. That's a perfect way to absolutely murder the suspension of any single-seater race car you put on this track. Murder.
Grant Davis finds himself third now because Esteban Rodriguez jumps ahead. Rodriguez now second on the board. I referenced, of course, this being our one international stop on the calendar, and we love to see drivers from outside of the United States get into the series. Well, Esteban Rodriguez making his debut, driver out of Brooklyn, New York, but has ties to the Pure Sims esports team, which has a lot of representation all across the service. A couple of other drivers as well making their debuts. We saw Brett Pancari get into the series for the first time a couple of weeks ago. You have another Limitless esports driver, Alexander Wright, Gregory Shaw as well, drivers who have some significant non-oval experience on the service as well. So a good opportunity and good timing for those drivers being moved off of the wait list to get ready to go racing here in Montreal and try to make a point and show that they belong there. As you can see, that 57 getting a whole lot of curb there coming to the end of his lap.
It's the likes of Jason Staney. He'll come across the line this time for the end of his second lap and his only timed lap Good enough though for fourth with 141.246 on the boards for that number 57 car, and I believe that just leaves one car on the racetrack, and it's gonna be this right here. Power sliding in out of the final corner. Tom Wetmore crossing the line. He will not improve on his time. Yellow in all three sectors, and there is one more driver, Michael O'Reilly, with Grant Davis, both out there on the racetrack as well. And see what O'Reilly will be able to do here as he'll cross the line. I don't think we'll be going for any kind of improvements, though. Here's the Hasib Design number 24 car, driven by Grant Davis. Oh, he's going to clip the grass and go for a spin. That was down and entering turn number 8, and that is going to see his qualifying come to a premature end.
No more than, what, 2 minutes after we referenced the fact that you got a lot of grass and right up to the edge of the racetrack, you don't have a lot of extra space to play with. Does he overstep that boundary a little bit? And most drivers now have been able to complete their qualifying times with time to spare. A handful of drivers still on the racetrack simply going for extra laps. Grant Davis back out onto the racetrack now as well. Wetmore's just getting some bonus time in. Same with Staney. So that may wrap up the qualifying session as the clock continues to wind down. And of course, we talked about that championship battle, Nolan. There's more to it, of course, than just that driver's title fight, because a lot of the big names going to have a hand in who walks away with the team championship this year. Flat Out Esports #1 leading, keeping it Real Esports #2 by 13 points. Those teams have seen the most participation all season long, and that one, a second fight that we're likely going to be watching all the way through to Vegas.
A lot of the drivers that were out there on the racetrack qualifying that have had their laps invalidated and now just seem to think of practice an in-lap. It's a very risky entry to pit road here, isn't it? And we're going to be seeing that in full force tonight. It's not like one of those other circuits where you pull off the racing line to get into pit road. No, not here. Here, you're right on the racing line, and you're even going to be full throttle still into a braking zone that everybody else is going to be braking much, much earlier, sometimes up to 200 meters earlier, because you don't have to brake for a little while longer, because the pit entry right on that racing line. Going to be a very risky entry for a lot of the drivers tonight, and it would not surprise me if we saw an incident entering pit road. It's pretty much on the Circuit Villeneuve bingo cards that it got set up for me here.
Yeah, we'll be checking that off as the night goes on. You can see the picturesque views. This racetrack, of course, seated on the river just outside of downtown. Would love, as NASCAR continues to talk about ambitions to bring its series more, international events. We've seen, of course, as we've mentioned a couple of times, Xfinity Series racing here in Montreal before, but would love, as NASCAR looks to Canada and NASCAR looks to Mexico, to see this racetrack possibly get a Cup Series date. It really is just such a treat of a facility to hold a race at. Tonight, though, we're going to go racing in the RSR IceBreaker Winter Series. It qualified has drawn to a close, so let's go trackside. Take a look at your RSR starting grid. Agnell Phillip indeed secures pole position. Your championship leader 5/10 up on Esteban Rodriguez, who starts in second. Cody Harris is third tonight alongside with Jason Staney, teammate to the 35 car, right behind him in fourth with Nate Stewart and Kyle Trudell, your top 6.
7th place going to be the likes of Jaron Weinmaster for Extreme Performance Motorsports, with the likes of Andrew Phipps back in 8th. Tom Wetmore going to be bringing it up in 9th position with Michael O'Reilly for Flat Out Esports, rounding out the top 10. Braden Whitaker and William Schmidt will take it up in row number 6.
And continuing on through, Richard Woodruff and Gregory Shaw going to make up row number 7. Ross Cato will start 15th tonight alongside the Canadian Brett Pancari in 16th. Alexander Light making his RSR debut is 17th. Next to him will be Brandon Fetterplace.
And bringing up the last 6 on the grid, Corey Blevins is bringing it up at the 19th position. He was the last driver to set a qualifying time, a whopping 12.5 seconds back off of Agnell Phillip's pole time. So a lot of work for Blevins to do if he wants to get a good finishing position here today. Then you enter the drivers that opted not to take a qualifying lap from 20th on back. Harry Grindell for Team Kamikaze, Grant Davis for Flat Out Esports, Eric Papineau out of Virginia, Minata Major racing out of Florida, and of course Michael Kaczynski for Extreme Performance Motorsports taking up the rear as well.
So look top to bottom at your Real Sim Racing starting grid tonight as we take a look at the track conditions in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Bit of humidity and mugginess in the air. Track temp at 112, though. I'll work on converting that to Celsius, but that's probably mid-40s or so. And some things to note for RSR competition rules on the road courses. There are no full course cautions, so this is going to be the only time you see them bunched up behind the iRacing safety car today. It is worth noting because there can be no cautions. No matter what incidents happen on the racetrack, drivers may accrue penalty points. Depends on the number of incident points that they get. On road courses, those tend to be the off track. So if you're cutting the limits a little bit too frequently, you could find yourself with some penalty points come to the end of the night. Pace car gonna head off to the safety of pit road, though, and the field is in the hands of your pole sitter and championship leader, Agno Phillip from north of the border. We're happy that you're with us on RaceSpotTV as we say, let's go road course racing in Montreal. And first time to the hairpin, Agno Phillip opens up his advantage. It's still Rodriguez 2, Harris 3. That battle from second on back, very lively as Phillip opens up to 1 second.
So far, a very, very clean start for everybody in this field. The only driver I saw going off track was Corey Blevins, but it was a self-inflicted error, and he just took a quick off-track excursion, cut a chicane, and it was back on like it was no big deal. So it's been an abnormally clean start to these races in comparison to how stock car races on road courses of any kind usually go. Especially here, though, I was expecting us to wad it up in that first chicane over at turns 3 and 4. But credit to these guys, they kept it clean. Agno Phillip leads the first lap, but he's already pulled out a gap of over a second. Cody Harris trying to run down Esteban Rodriguez for that second position.
You watch that battle for the number 2 position, and in fact, both of those drivers had a better second half of that first lap than Agno Phillip did. So the gap closes in just a little bit within striking distance. We always see, Nolan, when you go to a road course race like this, it's very clear where those tiers of drivers are, right? You're going to have about 25% of the field that does not race road courses, and they will struggle. They know they will struggle. Their objective at the back, keep the race car clean, get through the race, pick up points as other drivers, push the limit too far, and wreck out of the race. Then you have those drivers who are in a semi-competitive state, right? The mid-pack's going to be very competitive. You're not going to see a lot of separation position to position, but then you've always got 2, maybe 3 drivers who have got it figured out, who love the road course racing, who have a realistic chance at winning the race. You're not going to win the race on lap 2. But the big thing here is Phillip has the track position. We all know Agno Phillip likely has the car, certainly has the skill to win this race. So what's the accomplishment for Rodriguez and Harris? All they're focused on right now, keep him within sight. That is the early goal in the first half of this race, is to not let that 94 car get out of range.
And in fact, they might be able to do just that. Esteban Rodriguez actually closed in a little bit this past lap. He closed in by about 0.2 of a second, so that gap is coming down. Rodriguez is absolutely on it tonight, and he's looking to see if he can go and take the fight here to Agno Phillip, with Cody Harris kind of hanging around. In fact, there you see it right there. Rodriguez lining it up on the timing board, setting that fastest lap of the race earlier, 141.459. I reckon, though, we're going to be seeing some guys actually putting down some even faster laps when we get down deeper into this race, when we're in more clean air. we don't have to worry so much about being caught up in a lot of traffic.
You can see Harris doing a good job of staying on the back of Rodriguez. Jason Staney in fourth with a lot of pressure from Nate Stewart as well. But it looks like the lines have been drawn. Your top 5 right there, putting a bit of a gap to them and Jaron Weidmaster, who may kick off that mid-pack area. You can see the purple flash up on the left-hand side of your screen, so that's a new best for Rodriguez as he sits in the number 2 position. Harris 3, Staney, Stewart your top 5 with Weidmaster, Trudell, Phipps, Wetmore, Lariah the top 10. And just look at the views. We talk about how iconic this racetrack is, and it's that hairpin that'll get you every time. One race car slow early in this race. What is the issue for Alexander Light? I wonder if he had gotten a cutting the course penalty and then had to yield that position. There are a lot of those, especially in kind of the S-curves and the hairpins. If you miss the corner, iRacing will penalize you, force you to slow down and give up the time gained, and locked up the brakes, nearly got into the car in front of him. And there it is, that little trip through the grass hit him with a penalty. He had to slow down, and that's going to cost him a position.
He's not the only one, as Gregory Shaw just cut the last chicane. He's going to drop several positions down the pit straight, as you've got a lot of drivers now starting to make those mistakes. Drivers getting a bit more confident on the brakes for some of these tighter chicanes here. And sooner or later, one of these guys is going to get bit by a big time, like pushing it a bit too hard and going up and into the wall. There's that number 35 car mentioned before. Brett Poncari, he's trying to see if he can keep Gregory Shaw at bay. Shaw just dropped a couple of positions down that pit straight after he had to cut the last chicane, and now I imagine he's going to have to fight here. Shaw's looking to get back by him. Behind him, you see Brandon Fenner plays Grant Davis in a bit of a scrap for 18th spot on the timing boards as well. So you got a lot of guys still running those to tail, but the issue with a track like this, you're hard-pressed to find a lot of pass opportunities with cars like these. The straights just aren't that long enough. You really have to try to make yourself with a good run into turn 13, or you're not going to have it. Or the exit like Gregory Shaw just did, out of turn number 8 and down, or 7 and down for 8, he'll go down the inside and take that spot away. As up front, oh, he's deep, and Shaw's going to lose the spot right over again.
Same spot where we saw Light cut the track, so that's going to be a big time loss there for Shaw. By the way, Alexander Light had another spin on the entry to the corner, so one kidding. We were telling you this racetrack's very tight. The tricky part is, of course, you're going to want to go see how they're on the left side of the road here. They want to get as far left as they can to, of course, better that arc into the corner. And sometimes drivers are getting a little bit too far to the outside. They nick that grass on the binders, and that's the quickest way to send the race car around. So it's been a story of mistakes in the opening 5, Nolan. It's worth noting this race not going to be too terribly long. They aren't always, of course, very long here in the Winter Series, but on the stopwatch, this race should clock in just under an hour. So it's not a long taxing race. However, with this many technical corners, 13 turns every single trip around, it can feel a lot longer than it will be in actuality.
I think that's kind of the big point, right? I mean, this time, it's not so much the time that these guys have to worry about getting fatigued about, it's the actual energy it takes to exert in order to drive this track. This is a track that, for these cars, it's a tough track to handle, and you have to really be on point every single lap and every single corner. You're going to find yourself in a wall with some unrepairable damage, and that's one thing that these guys are going to have to really try to see if they can push that down and see if they can just try to weather that storm all the way throughout this race. We're already almost 6 laps deep, almost a fifth of the way through, but you've still got so much left to go. It's going to be a tough challenge for a lot of these guys to get themselves sorted. A bit of a bobble for Stanley out of the Lapingo hairpin that time by. Nate Stewart trying to see if he can mount an offensive in the Hopkinsville Community College Toyota Supra.
So far, Harry Grindle, the driver, making the most moves. That's all the way back from the mid-pack of the field. Started in 20th. He is up to 15th position. He is the biggest mover thus far. No changing inside of the top 5. Now for 9th again, trying to see if there's going to be a swap out as we watch Wetmore and Lariah. And you take a look again at the standings as they entered tonight. Agnew Phillip with that slight advantage over Lariah. Lariah's having a pretty good night, Nolan, but when you're having a night that Agnew Phillip's having, it's going to be very difficult to make up ground. And just after Lariah was able to chip into that, of course, the benefit of a tough break for Phillip last week. Agnew Phillip looking to spread the gap once more.
It's not going to stop Wetmore from trying to build up this gap all the same through that tight right-hand corner of turn number 5 and down to the hard brazel that immediately follows it into 6. Doing a good job to keep Lariah at bay, but he's not able to quite break away. And I think he's not helped by some of the dirty air being kicked up by guys like Phipps, Trudell, and Wymaster about a second and a half or so up the road from him. That's obviously going to be a big factor that these guys are going to have to worry about. And he's going to go too deep, and Wetmore jumps across the grass. Doesn't lose a spot, though. It might, though, if he has to let Lariah through here into the Lipingo hairpin, but I think it might have just been able to get away with that one, being able to serve that slowdown while he was still trying to get back onto the track.
Things happen quick. You get into a rhythm, you get comfortable. Somebody goes off the racetrack in front of you. You got to make sure that you know what's going on. And let's be honest, Nolan, the people on the service aren't so very quick to yield. Kind of like getting on the freeway every once in a while, but it's every single quarter here on the sim. Nobody cares who's got the right of way. Nobody cares who's in position. And a spin now for the 20 car of Brandon Fetterplace back in 17th position. That's going to cost him more positions. Struggling back there now towards the rear of the field. And let's see what happened. Not a ton of curb there. Got a couple of cars pressuring him from behind. Davis tucked up behind, of course, keeping it real too. One of the teams that we had just talked about being in contention for the team championship. And wow, that was on the brakes only. Just got in too hard and locked it up, and it spun that car around. That was all on his own.
Almost looked like the dreaded wheel hop. We don't hear that all that often, but that was a classic case of that one right there. And that's a pretty scary place to lose it at as well, especially if that car shoots over to the left, because that's a very fast braking zone. You got a lot of guys right behind you. It would have been worse if you had guys in front of him, I'd imagine, because that's, you know, what's even worse. You got to worry about running over the guys then in front of you. But so far, so good. A little tap to the wall, but he kept that thing moving. Fight for third still on. Nate Stewart trying to pressure Jason Staney, and now Cody Harris right in front of them. He started to lose touch to those top two. We talked about it earlier about how Rodriguez and Harris just need to try to keep Agnew Phillip in sight. Cody Harris looks like he's failing in that mission, and he's now falling back into the clutches of Jason Staney and Nate Stewart in this fight for third. As we're running towards that turn 13-14 chicane, is going to be again hard on the binders, and Harris just able to keep it steady, and the side-by-side fight back here as well as we start to run down the casino straight. This is Grindel, Cato with a slowdown, and Brandon Whitaker as well. So Ross Cato having to let off the binders. He's got a slowdown penalty to serve from some point on the racetrack, and going to get that sir to get himself all rolling now. So he's lost 2 positions in just about 2 quarters here, and now South Tracy, if he can try to hike back down Whitaker and Grindel up the road. He's fallen to 15th.
And let's listen in as you ride on board. Felt like he waited an eternity that time. It threw the hairpin to get back onto the gas. It really shows you, Nolan, just how patient you need to be. You can't force these cars through the corner. You got to drive them through the corner.
You put any more than about 15 to 20% throttle pressure on when you got the wheel turned that much in a hairpin. That car is going around with rear end wheel spin no matter how much trying to save it. You have to be so patient with these cars and trying to coax them through. You almost have to kind of baby them through these corners. You can see guys that are just standing trying to tiptoe their way through some of the bit of sharper elevation changes on the racetrack of what little there are, most notably down through turns 3 and 4 there. And Stewart making a peek to the left there. Thought maybe he tried dive bomb up into turn 6. That doesn't typically go so well, and it looks like not going to be a whole lot going on in the fight for third so far. Everybody's just kind of letting this race come to them, and they're going to let these guys get themselves a bit sorted later on in this race. That's where we're really going to be seeing some of these battles starting to pick on up. But I think the question now is for guys like Staney and Stewart, yeah, we know they're quick because they're up in the top 5, but do they have the pace to catch up to the top 2 if they can break by Harris?
Oh, and a look to the inside there. Maybe a slight thought from Jason Staney to try to make a defensive move, as it was Nate Stewart looking to the inside, but Stewart did not pull the trigger. These drivers have sat 3rd, 4th, and 5th since this race got underway. Drop back a little bit. Andrew Phipps at a 25 car. He's under fire. Jared Widemaster was the outside through the hairpin, but he's funnied back now as they race down to the wall of champions. Right-hander going to be one of the tightest corners coming up here on the racetrack. You can't fit 2 cars through it. Will they try?
They'll try.
Neither driver is going to back down. They touch. The 9 goes over the curbs. And on the top side there, Phipps gets the spot. The 9 has to slow down for cutting the corner.
Oh boy, that got a bit hot and heavy there for a brief moment, but these guys again able to keep it all sorted. But Jared Widemaster now has a slow down to the serve, but Phipps is too deep into 1. That's going to cost him big time for 2, and then Widemaster going to try to battle back. He's going to stamp that back end out though. Too aggressive trying to get on the throttle. He could have had him up to 3, but that little mistake is going to cost him, as now Widemaster's got to sit in behind Andrew Phipps. This whole debacle started from when Widemaster went too deep and jumped over the chicane at turns 7 and 8, and then went too deep into the hairpin at Lapingo. That's what kind of started this whole thing off, and now you see Andrew Phipps in front of him, still struggling big time. He's too deep into turn 6 out of 7. Widemaster's got the run, but not enough to make something happen, and Michael O'Brien, I'd imagine, getting impatient watching all this going on in front of him.
Yeah, he's going to want this to get sorted out sooner rather than later. I think that goes for everybody who's stuck into one of these packs, right? You've got the group up front with Harris, Staney, and Stewart. In fact, they're side by side now, up back inside at the top 5. The 4-car clears, so give it to Stewart. First change for position in the top 5 tonight, and the 4's been able to make the move. He can now set his sights solely on that of Cody Harris.
Good effort there from Nate Stewart. Threw that one up the inside of the turn 11 hairpin there, and that's what allowed him to get that run down the casino straight. And I have a feeling that with the draft, Staney probably could have fought him back a little bit more down in the turn 13, but likely it wasn't going to be enough to actually make the spot back, and I think he realized that as well, so he decided to just kind of back that one off and, you know, live to fight another day. You'll have your chances later on in the race. And it's already amazing to think we're already approaching the halfway point. I think we're already kind of at that point where you pit now, you're good to go to the end on fuel. So these guys are now going to start wondering about pit strategies. When do you want to come on down to make your one and only pit stop here of this race? Do you want to make it a bit earlier in the race, or do you want to wait until you're a little bit deeper in? And we'll look back, meanwhile, to this fight here between Michael O'Brien, Jared Widemaster, and Andrew Phipps as they run through turn 5.
This is the second of those groups that we've been following, and seems like Lariah, the one on the move of these. He's up a spot, was able to get around Wetmore earlier in this race. Widemaster down a spot. He got passed by Andrew Phipps earlier in this race, and Oh, the 9 car locks it up. Lariah, though, nowhere to go. That corner just was not wide enough. Now he's going to look to the left-hand side. It's going to mean that he will try to go the long way around as they head down to the hairpin, and Widecaster will not fight him for it. So Lariah drives himself now to a race-high P8.
You saw right behind him as well, a dive to the inside as Schmidt picked up 10th place from Tom Wetmore as well. Now, you mentioned Lariah wanted to fight that outside line. That's honestly not the worst of ideas. If you can get a good drive off, you can actually get a really big run all the way down the casino straight. So it's definitely a possibility. Meanwhile, that fight for first again started to close. Agno Phillip has been steadily losing a bit more time. 100th here, 100th there. Back to Esteban Rodriguez. And now Phillip's lead could potentially be in trouble here as that gap closes in to, again, under a second. It was up to 2 earlier on in this race.
It has been in flux, certainly. Last lap for the race leader, Agno Phillip, a 1:45.364. That of Esteban Rodriguez, 1:45.503. So despite the fact that this gap has shrunk, I should say, overall, it grew last lap. Last lap was still in favor of Phillip. So goes to show you, I don't think it's as clear-cut of a story as Phillip's the better car by a significant margin, and Rodriguez is better this later into the run. I think it simply comes down to just a tricky racetrack. I mean, you're going to be hard to replicate your lap time lap after lap after lap.
I agree with that one. I mean, this is such a challenging racetrack. It's one of the tracks where you'll know when you've hit that perfect lap, and then after you come down from the high of realizing you've hit that one good lap, you have to deal with the absolute crushing pain that comes afterwards. No, you're not going to be able to replicate that throughout the entire rest of this race, or at least until you come on down and get some fresh tires. Fight still on for fourth as well, with Nate Stewart and Jason Staney running down the casino straight down towards turn 13 and the wall of champions. So far, Staney's been applying pressure to the back end, but hasn't really committed to any sort of moves. There was a point a little while back where he actually got right to the back bumper. Probably could have gone for a bump and run, but opted not to, instead of backing off early. So I wonder if Staney just trying to see if he can force Stewart into a mistake so he can get by him once and not have to worry about fighting him again.
Stewart's doing what he can, of course, making his RSR debut here with the Winter Series. But Staney really the aggressor in this battle now. Stewart was able to make the move. Thought that at that point it was done, admittedly, Nolan. I'm like, all right, he's going to go up to get Cody Harris. But last couple of laps, Staney been putting the pressure on. That was a nice corner there, though, by Stewart. A little bit out of shape at the back end there. Now up front, look at Agno Phillip. He's under pressure. A little bit squirrely under the brakes, too. So both of these battles inside of the top 5 heating up as Rodriguez looking to lead a lap in his first race of the season.
Down to a half a second and continuing to close. Esteban Rodriguez gonna get right up towards the back bump of Agno Phillip, trying to close up to the tailpipes of the Camaro for the A51 Pro Chevrolet. And oh, Phillip taking the defensive line. Miser's been on the brakes a bit too aggressively. He's gonna step that back end out. Rodriguez thinking about the over-under, not gonna go for it. Meanwhile, Staney's gonna spin it out. You see him recovering just at the tail end of the shot in the background. No other drivers collected. Fights on for the lead. Will Rodriguez have a move into turn 13? He's close enough to do so. Is he brave enough to go for it, though, from this far back? Making the look, not gonna commit. Agno Phillip is taking it to pit road.
Agno Phillip going to go straight down the access road to the pits. We talked about his lap times in the mid to low 145s. Start of the race, he was significantly faster, so tire fall off has been a factor. So Harris now around Rodriguez going to assume the #1 position in this race. It was all the 16, but he got into that break-in match with Phillip, missed the final chicane. So it's Phillip to pit road and Harris of all to the race lead. That may prove to be a costly mistake for Esteban Rodriguez, that I think is going to be costly for both of these drivers, Nolan. The fact that they allowed Phillip to get to pit road before them, because that's going to be a quick 2 to 3 second gain on the fresh tires. Of course, that will balance out towards the end of the race, but Phillip's game has seemingly always been, so far tonight, the track position.
I'm not quite so sure about that one, because Agno Phillips come out right in the thick of one of those big packs we were looking at earlier on, right in the midst of that fight for the 9th position. So Phillips got a lot of traffic to work with at the moment. That's going to be slowing him down big time here, and he might even burn up the fresh rubber. Rodriguez off again at turns 8 and 9. He's going to recover right in front of Stewart. Stewart doesn't know where to go. He's going to scramble to the right and pick up the 2nd position in the Oscarville Community College Toyota Supra. So Rodriguez goes from potential race lead down to provisional P number 4. I think you're right. I'm not quite sure how this strategy is going to play out. I honestly think this might be more to Phillips' detriment. He exited pit road with a bunch of lap traffic, and then you top it all off with the fact that he still has over half a race to go on one set of tires.
He came in just a little bit shy at the end of lap number 13, but of course that puts the heavy onus of 17 laps on his tires, and there's the response from Nate Stewart, who's going to pit for the number 3 spot. But I think it is worth noting, Nolan, Cody Harris and Esteban Rodriguez do not follow Phillip to pit road. If they follow the lap afterwards, you're essentially conceding that Phillip got you, right? If you come down, you're not going to gain much, but they may have a better long-term advantage, as we see Trudell out there now, if they stay out for a couple of laps. Lean in to trying to pit just past that halfway point, but it seems for the majority of the field, this is the magic number, because Phipps is in, Schmidt, Woodruff, and Moore all cycling through pit road.
Among them, Nate Stewart, who is now leaving pit road. Mike Kuczynski, I noticed, is in pit road, but out of the race car, so he's not going to be finishing up this race. Neither will, in fact, Mike Maddox or Corey Blevins. They are all out of this race, and none of them from crashes. All of them out just due to having enough and coming on down to the pit road of their own will. So I think now we're at the point now where we can start to see Agno Phillips start to maybe stretch his legs a bit with that fresh pace, and now he'll be able to get that hammer down and try to gain some time. But the question is, how much time has he lost on his outlap? That's the best point with these stock cars on the fresh rubber, is when they still get it up to temperature. Now he's going to have to slow down a little bit, because the tires, you got to be careful not to overheat them. You can push a little bit harder on those opening laps, but not so much anymore. And I think that traffic that he had to fight it out with is going to cost him, but that's going to cost him as well, as he goes too deep into turn 8 and almost cuts the chicane at 9.
Here's a look back up front. Cody Harris going to approach the halfway point, this time by 15 down, 15 to go at Montreal. He continues to stay out. About half of the field has come down pit road. Your top 4 yet to pit. Of course, many of those drivers only in the top 4 because they have yet to pit. However, Jason Staney is in from the number 3 spot. That's another top 5 car to come down.
And Michael Lariah is going to go in with him right behind. So that is Lariah going to be down into the pit road as well. He was in that fight for about the 8th, 9th, and 10th positions. Wetmore and Wymaster also coming in nose to tail. So this fight here might be determined by who can get out of their pit stall first. And you can see the number 70 car there taking up positions. That's Harry Gridell, going to move up into the top 5 on the racetrack, but he is, I believe, still yet to pit as well. So we'll see what Grindell will end up doing here. Stanley comes out in front of Grindell, so doesn't have to worry about slower traffic behind. Here goes Lariah out of pit road. He'll be the next driver out. I'm still keeping my eyes, though, on Wymaster and Wetmore. Those are the 2 drivers I'm keeping tabs on, and it's Wetmore out first. He's going to jump Wymaster.
And you can see now this battle going to pick up right where things left off, as Wetmore pretty good on pit road, nothing noticeable there, and ends up, as mentioned, in front of Jaron Wymaster. And now taking a look at the number 4 car of Nate Stewart. Stewart, the second highest running car, who has already pitted tonight. Pitted a lap and a half ago. Agno Phillip, of course, the net race leader, but all of this. Phillip is 19.48 seconds, Nolan, behind Harris and Rodriguez. And they're going to spend about 38 seconds on pit road. And in fact, Rodriguez is going to do so right now. The 16 is in from second. So he's going to end up 20 seconds behind Agno Phillip. Now, of course, Agnell had the fresh tires. He's been making up time. Rodriguez and Harris, eventually, when Harris comes down to pit, going to have better tires. They'll start to make up the ground, but it just seems like a daunting number.
I think what's going to help out, though, is, again, the fact that Rodriguez and subsequently Harris, when they both come in, they are going to be on some fresh tires. Now, it's only going to be about 2 or 3 laps. Typically, that wouldn't be so impressive on the oval side of things, right? I mean, at that point, we're thinking, oh, well, they're going to be about in the same cycle. Road courses, though, you have to remember, are significantly longer. 1 lap on tires around a road course could easily equal up to about 3 or 4 laps on an oval. This is almost the equivalent of pitting a good 8, 9 laps later with how much the tires can wear down on a road course and how impactful tires can be. So I think there's going to be a huge advantage here, at least early on in these runs, for Rodriguez, Stewart, and Harris. Phillip could be in trouble later on, especially since Nate Stewart is only 3 seconds behind Agno Phillip when he was out of pit road.
Rodriguez, of course, ends up just under those 20 or so seconds behind. The gap right now showing at about 15, 16 seconds. Stewart was able to get ahead of him by 9. Stewart, of course, trying to leapfrog by being on Agno Phillip strategy, so that's a pickup for Stewart. Nothing guaranteed yet. Now here we go. Cody Harris on lap number 17 will come down and give up the race lead. He led 4 laps. He's going to get a couple of bonus points for that, and it will hand the race lead off to this man. Agno Phillip going to go to the race lead by a whopping margin. This race is not done, but on the call with the strategy, Phillip now going to be playing defense, and he's going to have a lot of pad. Here he passes by Harris before Harris even gets service. What I'm curious about is where is Harris going to end up in relation to the car who we just saw come down pit road in Rodriguez.
I'm going to try to compare some of the lap times here between Phillip here and Nate Stewart, at least, on the last little while. And Nate Stewart has actually been quicker. In fact, the last lap alone, Nate Stewart reeled in almost 0.7 of a second and another 1/10.5 before that. So the gap is still coming down, and should be coming down, I reckon, even more between Stewart and Cody Harris. So there's a lot to be gained here for a lot of these drivers. So I think it's going to be a really big question as to who the heck is going to come out on top of fights like this one. I mean, this is where it becomes a strategy game, right? At this point, you've committed. There's no going back. There's no cautions to bail you out. You just got to try to get yourself as sorted as you can and try to just keep your head down and make as few mistakes as possible for a run towards the end of this race. I am pleasantly surprised by how clean of a race we've had so far. Very few cars actually going off track, and so far no actual car-to-car incidents as of right now.
Yeah, we've seen some good battles as you see Agno Phillip going to work around some lapped traffic there. Oh, and a bit of a touch behind as that was Eric Papadow. Fun with Alexander Light. That was for position while they were both getting passed by Phillip. The 37 of Papadow moved out of the way, and the 8 car tried to take advantage, and it was Papadow who shrugged it off, but it is an Agno Phillip race lead here by 2.8 seconds over Nate Stewart. Stewart's got a lot better tires, but I don't know if Stewart really showed us the pace Nolan in the first half there to make that up, but it's 2 seconds to Stewart, it's 9 to Harris, and it's 10 to Rodriguez. So a big gain for Harris there is that he was able to get out ahead of Esteban Rodriguez. One less car he's got to deal with.
One less car to deal with, and now Cody Harris embroiled in a fight here with Esteban Rodriguez sitting 9 and 10 seconds back behind Agno Phillip, and that gap just broke underneath 9 seconds for Cody Harris, but not by much. So still a lot of fluctuating gaps. I'm going to wait about 2 or 3 laps to make some actual predictions here on where Cody Harris and Rodriguez may be in relation to Agno Phillip before the end of this race, because obviously a lot can change in these 3 laps, especially since they're catching up to that same bout of lap traffic as well. Here in the back of the field on the pit straightaway, you got the fight for 15th between Harry Grindel and Brett Punkari down into turn number 1. Punkari currently hanging off at the 50th position, and Grindel trying to go for a bit of an over-under through turn number 2, where the 90-degree left-hander cuts into a 180-degree right-hander. It will work out. He's going to send one up the inside, a 3 and 4. It's a bold spot to go for a move, and I don't think Punkari saw it coming.
Well, that's always a good time, is to kind of catch somebody off guard. You know, some of these packs, these cars are so close to one another, you almost get a little bit complicit, and you don't always watch to make that defensive move into the corner. And well done from Punkari to try to catch out that, at least attempt to try to catch that move there without him looking. But Yeah, it was well executed as Grindel's able to drive on through. Grindel's been pretty good tonight, all things considered. Started 20th. I mentioned earlier he was the biggest mover. Still is at +5. A couple of other big movers now entering the conversation. Schmidt's +4. You got Lariah, Davis, Papadow, and Stewart at +3. Again, on road races like this, when everybody's able to get clean qualifying laps in, you're not going to expect anybody to make up huge swaths of time and positions throughout the race. Sounds like Nate Stewart had a problem, Nolan. The number 4 car was 2 seconds behind Phillip. Now it's 6 seconds.
Coming around through, I believe this is around turns 5 and 6 on the exit, and he's got that 5 or 19, the 20th spot right behind him. I wonder if maybe something happened involving those drivers, or we're going to jump it up a bit more. This is to turn 2. Oh, this is what he's trying to get around that fight for 19th and 20th position here, down towards turn number 3. And has he gotten into the back of the 37 car potentially? He's looking good here. This is one of the sketchier corners, round through 4 and 5. And oh yeah, I think that's where it was right there. Really kind of got bottled up behind the 37 car, and that's what costed him a huge chunk of time up towards Agnew Phillip. Lap traffic management coming into play, but one thing I do want to point out, Cody Harris, that gap down to 6.5.
Using those better tires to his advantage, last lap was a whopping 1.8 seconds faster than that of Agnew Phillip. And Cody Harris going to have to make a quick and concise move here, because if Nate Stewart makes him work for it at all, he's going to lose a bit of the bite that he's got in those fresh Goodyear tires. So can Cody Harris get around Nate Stewart in the battle for 2nd and 3rd? And then can he possibly turn on the jets to challenge the championship leader, Agnew Phillip, who has led the most laps tonight at 15 total? Phillip looking for his 2nd win of the season. Harris through turns 1, 2, now 3 in the tire tracks of the 4 car, but it's going to be a lot harder the closer he gets to execute the pass.
Cody Harris has got to make really quick work of Nate Stewart here. He's got to get this pass around him now, because at the rate that Harris is closing, he can still catch Phillip by the end if he can keep this pace up. But he's not going to be able to do that if Nate Stewart slows him down. He's got to get by in this lap, and maybe he can catch him by the time we get around to hopefully down by that last lap. He's got a 5.3 second gap to close in, but he's closing in several tenths of a second every single lap. So that fight for the race lead, it's not over yet, despite that 5-second gap at the moment. And you still see Stewart trying to see if he can hang on, but Cody Harris' tires even better than Stewart's, because remember, Nate Stewart pitted the lap after Agnew Phillip. So they've got very comparable tires. Stewart's got slightly better ones, so the quicker Cody Harris can get around Stewart, the quicker he can go after Agnew Phillip, and he's almost going to get to the back bumper. Thought he got into him for a brief moment. He's going to try to hammer down on the exit to see if he can straight line his way down the Casino straight. He'll tuck in with that draft and try to make a move down for turn 13. It's a long way, and I don't think he'll be close enough. He might have to force Stewart into a mistake. He will not be close enough. Hard on the brakes. Gotta be careful not to run him over, though, and it looks like Harris will have to maybe get this one down to 1.
I think it's a costly lap, admittedly, in his hopes of trying to chase down for the race win here in Montreal. And there's no reason for Stewart to make it easy. In fact, Stewart's going to want to make this as hard as possible, because if he gets passed up by Harris here, Rodriguez is going to be next. Rodriguez has got 3 lap better tires than Stewart, so Nate Stewart played the strategy, worked hard to get up to P2, and he could end up in 4th in just a handful of laps, depending on how well he does with the defensive drive here. And they are both hanging the rear ends out of that Toyota Supra in the number 2 spot. The Chevrolet Camaro running in 3rd, while Rodriguez in the Ford watches on. All 3 manufacturers represented in this 3-car battle, but Stewart's doing a hell of a job of playing defense.
Certainly is, but it's worth noting again, this gap is still closing. It's down to just 4 seconds, so Cody Harris has turned something on aside Nate Stewart, and now they're both catching up to Agnew Phillip up the road. In fact, again, you look at their lap comparisons, the last lap by Nate Stewart gained half a second on Agnew Phillip, a second the lap before, and 2 laps before that, another 9th of a second the lap before that. Just over half a second. The gap's still coming down Nate Stewart and Cody Harris could both catch up to Agno Phillip. I'm predicting a three-way fight for the lead before we hit this final lap here.
Looking to the inside, it's going to be a hard braking zone. If he does it, he tucks back in line. And Nate Stewart does a good job of not getting caught watching the mirror there to not overdrive that corner. He hit the curves pretty hard, but coming to 8 laps to go, Stewart still in second. And all of that time that Cody Harris had been making up at Agno Phillip once upon a time is now gone. The gap's still inches closer, 3.3, 2.5. But it's nowhere near as fast that, again, with each passing lap, that tire advantage is slipping away from both of these cars.
Honestly, this one, if I'm Nate Stewart, I'm almost considering letting Cody Harris pass. He's clearly the faster of the two drivers. Let him by, let him pull you up, Agno Phillip. They'll slow each other down by fighting each other. And if they take each other out, you can sweep through and steal that lead. Is it really worth risking slowing up Cody Harris right behind you? I mean, this late in the race for the championship, maybe. Cody Harris, though, can't imagine he's too happy with being forced to sit in behind Nate Stewart for as long as he has. He's going to look to the inside, forced to break earlier, though. Honestly, I think if he wasn't behind Nate Stewart, Harris could have caught Phillip by now. That's how much pace he had catching up to Nate Stewart, and they are still catching, but is it going to be enough?
If it wasn't for Stewart, Harris may have likely been to Agno Phillip by now, and you can see a little bit of frustration there from the number 28 car. Harris went deep. He's trying different things. He knows that it's not going to happen by just riding in line and taking his line. And again, to be fair, there's no reason for Nate Stewart to do anything but pull the Ryan Newman and be as difficult as possible. So he is not going to let up at any point as the battle for second place continues to sit on a razor's edge all the way to the wall that time for Nate Stewart. This lap going to be the first one in a while. I think that maybe Phillip was faster than both of them. It was a 44.2 for Phillip, still a little bit quicker for Stewart and Harris at a 44.0. I think it's worth noting, though, Nolan, before Harris got to Stewart, Stewart was losing time to Phillip. So this pressure is forcing Nate Stewart to drive hard, and they both made up time during this fight.
And that they have, and now they've started to stagnate. The gap has been hovering at around 3 seconds for a while now, and that's not something that Cody Harris can afford. Every single lap that ticks by, Agno Phillip's lead becomes that much harder to run down. Oh, there's the mistake from Stewart. Went too deep into turn 8. Harris opens it up on the inside at a 9. And Harris is going to go through to second place. Now he can open up the taps and start to let the lap times tumble as he tries to charge after the 94 car. Now he just has to play defense, I'd imagine, on Nate Stewart till the end of this lap. If he can fend him off into turn 13, Cody Harris is going to be smooth sailing. He's going to be able to close right up to Agno Phillip. Hopefully the damage to Harris's time here wasn't too much that he can't overcome that one. You don't often see close fights for wins at road courses, even in the RSR. Boy, it'd be special to see one here.
Well, he took advantage of the only mistake that he needed. And again, you see on the right-hand side of your screen, the points entering tonight. Phillip had a 5-point advantage over Michael Lariah. Lariah has done a good job, by the way, Nolan, that has kind of been the second story to this battle up front of gaining positions in the second half of this race. Lariah was 10th. He's now 7th. Still going to be a loss of points if these results hold, but a little bit of damage control successfully done by Michael Lariah.
About 2.1 the gap here as he continues to try to close this one on in, and every corner the gap comes down by a tenth or two. It's under 2.5 seconds, and it's about to be under 2 seconds. Agno Phillip is in big trouble, and he knows it, taking every single scrap of curb that he can without taking any kind of slowdown penalties. The 851 Pro Chevrolet might finally be losing the points lead here in this one. He had a horrible run at the Worldwide Technology Raceway this last time by, and now Agnew Phillip going to be potentially losing now on the points lead in this one as he continues to see these lap times crumble behind him. I mentioned it earlier, it was a good idea to try to go for it, but I'm not sure if it was the smartest play because he's going to be at such a disadvantage later on in this race, and it looks like my prediction started to ring true. The gap down to 1.5 seconds and under as we're still over 5 laps to go.
Still a lot of time for a lot to happen, and Rodriguez now enters the picture as the 4th car in this battle. You can see Rodriguez now joining in from 4th. Lost a bit of time, got passed by Harris when they decided not to come into pit road. Once upon a time, Harris was 2nd for the longest time. Does he have something to say late in this race as he tries to close back in on this battle here? Agnew Phillip, Cody Harris. It is 1.4 seconds. The gap with 5 laps to go in Montreal.
Gap down to 1.4. Last lap by for Cody Harris. It was 1.5 seconds gained and 0.6 of a second the lap before. Phillip is going to be losing this lead if he cannot put on the biggest defense he has ever had to put on in his RSR career. Cody Harris, under 0.5 seconds. He is there, and he's ready to take him this lap if Phillip makes even the slightest mistake.
It's exactly what happened when Cody Harris was fighting with Nate Stewart. He got to the bumper, struggled to establish positioning, but the moment that Nate Stewart left it opening, Cody Harris pounced, and Agnew Phillip, a Cup Series champion, cannot afford that mistake. And if there's anybody who can lock it down late, it's the driver of the 94 Nolan, but man, is 5 laps a long time.
Especially when you consider that each lap is almost 2 minutes apiece. That is an eternity to hang on with the driver that's had the tenacity so far that Cody Harris has had, as Harris is going to be set to try to take him into turn 13. Does he have the draft, though, to make it work? Tires can help you all you want, but on the straights, it's all down to aerodynamics. I don't think he's got nearly enough to make something happen in towards 13 and 14, but maybe a tighter line, a tighter exit out of 14 could give him the run down the pit straight. Oh, there it is! Phillips into the wall, and that's going to let Harris sweep through. The one mistake got to Agnew Phillip, and the Wall of Champions will claim another.
And just like that, new race leader Cody Harris will go to the top of the leaderboard, and it is not done yet for Agnew Phillip. Stewart on the bumper, Rodriguez behind. 3-way fight for the number 2 spot as the late pit stop from Cody Harris seeming to pay out here late.
Now it's just damage control for Agnew Phillip. This race is over for him in terms of going for a race win. Oh, and hello, side by side for 3rd and 4th, and Rodriguez just bullied his way past Nate Stewart through turn number 5, and Stewart's trying to see if he can put the bumper back to him, and Stewart's going to lose it out of turn number 5, and he's going to alt F4 his way out of the session, and I have a feeling tempers overflowing for Stewart. He tried to pitch Rodriguez in. Rodriguez did not yield, and he got his way through in one of the toughest corners, making past him by force.
And obviously the frustration for Stewart there, the fact that it was a mistake that allowed Harris to get by, and it was a mistake that allowed Rodriguez to get by. So a tough ending for Nate Stewart out of the championship, simply racing for results, and once it was clear the result was not going to be there, he was done. Harris, 0.8 to Phillip. Stewart's gone, so Rodriguez steps back on the podium. And I think that leaves only the battle for P2, Nolan, at least inside of the top 5, still to be decided, because Harris is going to need something wild to happen to lose this one. He has checked out. He's a second quicker lap still with those tires that are 4 laps newer than Agnew Phillip's.
Cody Harris is essentially has this race in the bag so long as he doesn't make any mistakes. Now, Cody Harris can finally afford to take things easy. It's really Agnew Phillip that he's got to that Phillip's got to worry about. Esteban Rodriguez still trying to make a run for that 2nd position. He's got up to 3rd, and now he'll try to see if he can't close in on Agnew Phillip. And Phillip, Again, still on really old rubber. Rodriguez came in a little bit, I think the lap before Cody Harris. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but now it's going to be the 35 car to try to see if he can't make up that one last position to go for second place. But Cody Harris, he's already completely checked out.
Of course, we talk about this championship battle. Cody Harris has started all 5 races, but has only seen the top 5 3 times. Now, that sounds like a low number, but you got the other drivers in the top 3 having 4 top 10s compared to Harris's 3. It's just been that little bit of a difference. And of course, Harris adding nothing, being an independent to the championship battle for the team title, means that it can still be a good night for the likes of maybe Trudell and Lariah a little bit further down the running order if they can lock this thing in. Here is Rodriguez trying his very best to get around a wounded and struggling Agnew Phillip, who's going to end this race on older tires than anybody else in the field. Rodriguez has the run, flashes a nose. He'll make the dive bomb in the battle for second. Nowhere close, though. Misses the corner. He's going to have to slow down likely, but how long will he need to slow down for? Because Phillip also had a bad turn too. So in the end, Rodriguez will still take in second.
Oh boy, it's fallen apart for Agnew Phillip. He just had to try to make that one move, and it just could not stick. Not on tires that old, and now Rodriguez is going to be clear for the second position. Phil, I think we'll have to settle for third. I think now Phillip can finally take a bit of a sigh of relief. He'll still get a podium, no doubt about that one, unless he can somehow manage to lose 11 seconds in just 2 laps, which that's not going to happen. He's going to take that third place for sure if he just keeps that car clean. As we'll check back in some of the battles deeper in the pack. How about this one? Last one for the spot. Last one for a top 10 position. Tom Wetmore trying to keep Harry Grindel behind him.
Been a while since we checked in with those drivers. Remember, it was Grindel making the moves through the pit cycle originally, and even he's got the back end of the race car dancing all over the place as we are with inside of 2 laps to go at Montreal, trying to get around Wetmore. This one for 10th and 11th. It is some minute off of the race leaders, but if these two were to force each other into a mistake, much like we saw with Rodriguez and Phillip both missing the final chicane, Richard Woodruff sits not too far behind. There he is lurking. Gregory Shaw not that far back either, but they touch. There was contact there. I believe Grindel got into Wetmore. Tough to see through the trees, but he apologized and allowed Wetmore to gather the race car, as up front it is 1 lap to go for Cody Harris.
What a save from Tom Wetmore. It's not easy to make a save through a corner like that one. That's one of the biggest corner-ending wrecks you probably could have had. The biggest race-ending wreck you could have is in a corner like that, but managed to get that thing under control. Harris, as I mentioned before, now 8.2 seconds clear from Esteban Rodriguez, and Rodriguez nowhere in sight. Agnew Phillip still hanging on for that third position, trying to see if maybe he can have one last look to get around for that second position before the end of this lap. Still within the second, but I think it's a bit of a long shot at this point in time. Cody Harris running his way through the middle portion of the circuit and just has to try to see if he can't get the last few laps through clean.
And the thing that he'll like to know is that it is clean racetrack up the road as well for Cody Harris, who, again, the story I always remember is in one of his very first RSR starts, put on such a good show in a cup car on a road course. And admittedly, when you're in a series with the likes of Freenosh and Danson and Agnew Phillip, has not had the race wins and has not had the success on these road courses, maybe in specific, that we would have expected out of Cody Harris, given just how good of a race car driver he is. But tonight, he bested on the strategy decision. It was Phillip who had dominated early. Harris kept him honest and kept him close. And in the end, it is Cody Harris who wins out in the strategy call here tonight. Final time. Gonna head through the last chicane, and alongside the Wall of Champions, Cody Harris is gonna win his first ever Real Sim Racing Icebreaker Winter Series race in Montreal.
And I don't think Cody Harris can quite believe himself with that one, that he managed to pull that off on that pretty much, let's call it the genius strategy lineup for the pit strategies later on, and still got a fierce fight going on for 10th and 11th place, as they've all just got off the track over at turn numbers 7 and 8. So a lot of fights still yet to be decided. Which Richard Woodruff now wants to make the move for Tom Wetmore, and all of a sudden Grindel nowhere to be found. Oh, no, not done yet. Wetmore's going to get dumped by Woodruff for 10th.
Drama on the last lap here in Montreal, and the 27 went through Tom Wetmore, and this may not be done yet. Wetmore going to try to put a block on Gregory Shaw, who's going to go to the outside. Punkari's got to be careful because Grindel might throw a dive bomb on him. Look at this. 6, 7, 8 cars all over each other on the final lap. Grindel will hold steady. Shaw does not make a dive, and after all of those fireworks, everybody through the final chicane clean. What an end for 11th on back.
What is it with us having some extremely intense last laps in the mid-pack in particular? All throughout the Winter Series, it's been this way. Every single race it feels like, and it's like these guys just can't catch a break back here.
And what did we say earlier? I was talking about the tiers, right? You got the drivers who are going to struggle. You got top maybe 2, 3 that are going to be really good. And you got the mid-pack who cannot get away from each other. That's what happens. When you're stuck racing with the same guys lap after lap, you're going to get a little bit frustrated, and you're going to be on top of each other at the end of the race, where you'll be like, listen, I've busted my butt for 30 laps here trying to get something. I'm going to try to take it. And I don't think anybody was really out of line there to begin with. There was a lot of contact, and maybe questionable contact, between the 27 and the 51. But the story of the night is Cody Harris. He's got a race win in the Cup Series, and now he has a race win in these Xfinity cars. Officially an icebreaker winner, Nolan, as we take a look at our full race results. Harris, Rodriguez, and Phillip, the top 3. We'll try to talk with them momentarily. Staney and Trudell, with Lariah, Schmidt, Phipps, Winemaster, and Woodruff, the top 10.
Back in 11th position, you've got Brent Punkari back there, over a minute behind race winner Cody Harris. Harry Goodell will be back in 12th, with Tom Wetmore in 13th. Gregory Shaw was in 14th. Ross Cato 15th. Braden Whittaker was the last driver to finish on the lead lap, back in 16th place. Grant Davis, Alexander Light, and Eric Papineau all finished 1 lap down. Bonanza Major brings it up in 20th place, 2 down.
And to round it out here tonight, Stewart with that late DNF ahead of the drivers who crashed out earlier. Fetter placed Kaczynski and Blevins, 22, 23, and 24. That's a look top to bottom at your full race results tonight from Montreal. It is a long racetrack, and Cody Harris still driving around to victory today, Nolan. So let's go in reverse order and talk first. You're down trackside with our 3rd place finisher tonight, Agno Phillip, who almost took home another win tonight, but extends his championship lead.
And Agno Phillip joins us here from that 3rd position. And Agno, you tried to go for the gamble on the early stop, but combination of slower traffic and older tires ended up costing you in the end, but you still walk away with a 3rd place finish. I'd still say it's not a bad result at all. You managed to still salvage some decent points out of this one.
Yeah, I think, net positive for sure. I think we gained quite a few points there. Just clearly missed it on the drive and long run there. I usually am pretty good at keeping the rears on it at these road courses, but for some reason today it just wasn't quite meant to be, I guess. But congrats to Cody. He was flying long run there, and really impressive to kind of see that drive from him. But yeah, a couple mistakes in the middle sector middle part of the race didn't really help. Came out in a really bad place with traffic, and just took forever to get back up to speed after the pit stop. If I had nailed all of that, maybe it would have, maybe we would have been able to make it a little bit more of a fight. But, is what it is. Cody's definitely the fastest guy on track, so I'm happy to see him win.
And of course, the Circuit Jacques Villeneuve is definitely among one of the more difficult road courses to go to. We talked about it earlier. It races much like a street circuit with how close these barriers are. Do the barriers ever intimidate you, or is it still just try to push it as hard as if you're on a more open track like the Glen?
I don't know that the barriers intimidated me. I think this track has a lot of really tight corners with, you know, really aggressive curbs that you have to get a decent bit of to make speed around here. But if you hit it wrong, it sends you way offline. And I think kind of early in the race, I was kind of being really conservative on those chicanes, but clearly wasn't saving any tire doing it. So I was definitely, you know, I think as the race went on, I got a little frazzled, got a little out of my groove. It's a tough track. I'm not particularly good at it. So still a lot better than 2 years ago in this series when I came here, and I think I wrecked in front of the leader a couple of times. So I'm happy that at least we finished the race in a reasonable position and got some good points out of it.
And of course, next race up, it's going to be back to the ovals and a flat one to kick it back off. New Hampshire Motor Speedway is going to be up next on January the 16th. What's it take as we get set to enter the Magic Mile?
Yeah, I'm excited for that race. Excited to get back onto the ovals. You know, we'll see what the points lead looks like. I think it should be around 10 or so. It's a good thing I got most laps led, I'm pretty sure, out of all that. So yeah, I think, you know, any oval we're pretty stout on, and we'll be in the mix to win. But there's good drivers in this league, so we'll just have to, you know, put in a good week of practice and see how it all shakes out.
Well, thank you for joining us here tonight here at Agno. Congratulations on the third place finish, and best of luck next week in New Hampshire.
Appreciate it, Nolan. Thank you.
Sagno Phillip joining us up here from the third position on the grid. Still have not been able to get a hold of Esteban Rodriguez, which will just leave the number 28 car, Cody Harris. Evan, I'll turn it up to you for our race winner.
Cody Harris has got his first win in the RealSimRacing IceBreaker Winter Series, has now got one in each of RSR's top levels. Cody, first and foremost, congratulations on the win.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. Early on, I struggled with the hot track temperature, and I kept making mistakes. Well, it started in qualifying. I can never seem to qualify at a road course. I always do something dumb, and maybe when I should have started second, start third, or, you know, puts me behind the 8-ball a little bit. But figured out what I was doing, just settled in and saved my tires, and then made it happen.
Of course, it was seemingly Agnell's race to dictate the strategy, right? Got the pole position, and you guys kept him in distance, which is what we talked about in the first half being key. The fact that he was leading the race and was able to make the first call on pit road, did you decide to go later because he had made that decision? Or regardless of what Agnell would have done, were you planning on going a little bit later on the stop?
I planned on going later because it seemed like the tires were, at least through my testing, the tires were going to fall off more and more. And I just wanted to be able to attack on the fresher tires. And if you could save them, you could get a good launch off of the turns. And that was kind of critical, not spinning him up with all the starting and stopping at the style track. And then, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Of course, just talk about what you enjoy so much about these road course races, right? I mean, we've seen you have so much speed at them, but haven't gotten that win on a road course race here at RSR competition. What do you enjoy about it specifically, and was there anything key about Montreal here tonight that kind of fit your driving style?
Tonight at Montreal, just having to save your tire, that's always been something I've been pretty good at, even on ovals, but sometimes the short runs don't let that happen, and there's a few people in here that are definitely better at it than I am. But yeah, that was the key, was just tire management. I've always enjoyed road courses and stock cars. I feel like that's my best combo on the sim. It's a little different than the cup car now because you can push flat out, you know, from start to finish in the cup car, not even take tires. But with this car, you know, you had to really manage them, and it makes it a lot of fun. And I always enjoy battling Matt. I was hoping he could race tonight, but then I'd have probably finished second. So, but yeah, I just really enjoy the road courses and the stock car.
One and done for the road course racing this season. A couple of different types of challenges coming up on the docket as we look to close out this short winter series campaign. New Hampshire and Vegas, and then it's on to another cup calendar. What are you looking forward to in the final two races?
I've always been decent at New Hampshire with the flat tracks where you have to have some brake and some tire management. Las Vegas, we'll see how that one goes. I lost a lot of points early in the year at Daytona, and then there was another race I think I got wrecked out of, so I'm probably a little bit out of the championship, but I'm just looking forward to going out and having 2 more good runs and ready for the Cup Series to get started.
Looking forward to seeing what you guys can continue to do. Cody, we'll let you get out of here. Before we do, though, the sponsors, the shout-outs of those good folks. We're taking a look at the 28 Chevrolet. Who do you want to say hi to?
Oh, I just want to say hi to my friends, family, and coworkers that watch me and support me in this iRacing, and thank you guys for putting this on every week. So it's so much fun, and I've definitely become a better iRacer because of this series.
We'll tell you what, we're happy to have you with us on Monday nights, Cody, and we look forward to continuing to watch you grow on the racetrack. Appreciate your time. Again, congratulations on that win. Hopefully, for your sake, the first of many, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
It's your race winner tonight from the virtual Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It is Cody Harris with his first ever RealSimRacing IceBreaker Winter Series win. He's now got one in the Winter Series, Nolan, and one in the Cup Series. Both of the top 2 levels now checked off the board for Cody Harris. As he mentioned, they're not going to be able to compete for the championship likely this season, and I want to turn to that conversation first. Agno Phillip in early DNF, I should say, last week was unable to finish the race. It gave Michael Lariah a huge boost. Tonight, not a bad night for Lariah, and Agno Phillip dropping down the leaderboard means that they only are separated by 3 spots, so that gap's only going to grow from about 6 points to 9 points. So this is still very tight with 2 weeks left. No big swing like maybe we were expecting.
Not quite a big swing like we were expecting, but still close enough that anything could happen in these latter 2 races. You've got 2 tracks left to go, right? On New Hampshire and Las Vegas. One of the fastest mile and a half we got on the service, and of course, the Magic Mile. A race that saw so much drama over in the Cup Series the last time we went here for the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series, and no doubt it's going to be a drama-filled race here. It just seems to be a track that just provides some entertaining shows late in RSR seasons, and I'm expecting for the IceBreaker Winter Series, it's going to be no different.
Anytime you go to a flat racetrack like that, things are going to get physical, and we expect nothing less when the championship is still hanging in the balance when we go racing for round number 7 in 1 week's time. But until then, though, that is it for us here tonight from Montreal. On behalf of our entire team at RealSimRacing, RaceSpotTV, and for your broadcast team tonight. For our producer, Joshua Lee, for Nolan Rempel, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Cody Harris, now a first-time Winter Series winner. The RealSimRacing IceBreaker Winter Series rolls on next week from iRacing's virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway on Monday, January the 16th. That race and every race can be found exclusively here on RaceSpotTV. Until next time, good night from Montreal.